One can easily note that humor as well as storytelling is very key in Africa. Whilst narrators have used storytelling for entertaining and transfer of culture, stories have been the very vehicles of misinformation, ranging from the village gossiping to the more advanced use of technology such as WhatsApp and Telegram, where videos and pictures with information from unknown experts is distributed easily. Exaggeration is a common character trait, from when men sat around the fire and the one who could tell the stories in the funniest and most dramatic manner would wear the crown for the day. So, misinformation is not rare, and during the pandemic, this may have even been more exacerbated as people tried to make sense of the new phenomena. Joining us today is Abiud Onyach, a communication expert using storytelling to demystify issues of climate change and politics, society and culture, translating complex subjects into words that are easily understood by communities. Through the use of stories, he has empowered the communities to use their voice, speak on the issues that affect the community. Today, he is here to help us demystify COVID-19, the pandemic that can better be explained with the use of stories here in Africa. Hi, I'm Esther Neema from Kenya. Almost 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, the world continues to grapple with the disease. Today, Africa is at the center of the story, and we have a communication expert to help us dissect some of the misinformation, fear, and politics, portraying Africa as a sick continent. Abiud, you actually had a tough scare when the pandemic was just starting. Maybe you could start by telling us your experience.
Thank you for having me here. I think the scare was sometime in October, I think. I had gone to Lamu for a work project and I got very sick. And I had all the symptoms. I could not taste, I could not smell. My sense of smell was not 100%. I was weak. I'm telling you the experience. I thought I was dying. I went for a test. I got a negative test, but I still felt like maybe that wasn't accurate. I mean, it was one.
It was. So you had the symptoms like COVID, but
yeah.
The test turned out negative.
The test turned out
But
negative.
would you say that just you confirming that, having that scare also made a lot of people reconsider their decisions towards the vaccine and things like that?
Not really. Generally, most people who even get this kind of disease, they won't even go to the hospital. I remember around that time I'd gone to the Aga Khan hospital, and when I was talking with the nurse, one of the things I got to learn was that if they were to get you, let's say they found out that you're positive and you're bedridden, or rather they have to keep you in a bed, the cost was going to be astronomical. And so many people, I think, also are avoiding situations where they'll have to go to the hospital because they're thinking, well, the insurance is not covering this, they will have to now do Harambes or get people to contribute for them. So there's so many other factors that are affecting that.
So many people actually end up avoiding instead of
Absolutely.
taking themselves to the hospital.
Absolutely.
Anyway, Abiud, there's been a lot in the news about COVID-19 and in Africa, right? What stands out for you?
Several things stand out. At the beginning, it surprised me the kind of fatalistic messaging that came from this, particularly from the West. And that was, why aren't Africans dying? And then this was something that many Africans did not take kindly. They felt like, why would anyone think that if a disease, simply because Ebola and the other kind of diseases have been killing Africans, so It was just automatic that COVID-19 should be killing many Africans.
Yeah.
But the Conversation, which is a respected publication here in Kenya, and it's an online publication, attempted to give some reasons or some answers as to why so many Africans were not dying. And they helped people understand better that Africa has a very young population compared to Europe and America. And if you look at the many people who were dying in Italy at the very beginning were mostly very old people. So
Yes.
I think that made a lot of sense. But the other thing that stands out for me also is the misinformation that came out with this, that COVID-19 couldn't kill Africans, or that Africans were immune to COVID-19.
I know, it's very interesting. But Africa has narratives of bravery and people standing out against things that are perceived dangerous by the rest of the world, and Africans believing they can overcome. And I'm sure you know the stories of Kinjekitile Ngwale and how people stood waiting for bullets, and but they still sort of died. That's on a lighter note, but do you feel...
really, if I could cut you short there, but I think that is really the problem sometimes with this kind of narratives, because even if the kind of example you've given, Kinjekitile wanted to give confidence to his people to fight the colonialists, and because of course they didn't have superior weapons, so he had to play with their psychology. And this is where the Maji Maji rebellion comes from, where they say Maji Maji, meaning that if you come and
shoot
and shoot, the bullets will not get you. And you see, now this is the same thinking, I would say, although it looks a bit far-fetched, but that is also the same thinking with people who now certain leaders who went ahead and told people that they were protected, and this also has in one way or another led to the misinformation.
Exactly. Well, and do you think that WHO or concerned organizations were able to get ahead of misinformation?
I think they tried, but it was not very successful. As long as more news of people in Europe and America are being portrayed as dying from this disease, and that in Africa nothing is happening, it only emboldens the acts of a number of people in Africa, particularly those in rural areas, believe that indeed they cannot die from COVID. But governments of Africa also weren't doing enough to stop the misinformation, in my view. Tanzania, for instance, were telling people that they tested vegetables, they tested carrots, and those kind of things, and they found COVID-19. So this goes only to undermine the work of those scientists who are really trying hard to expose some of these issues, and not forgetting Madagascar. With that discovery, when they were saying that they have now discovered a herbal sort of product that was going to heal people from COVID. And I remember BBC reporting on this, that Madagascar was struggling to keep the spike down, yet their president was promoting an unproven product.
Which brings to the question of the conversations that have still been around that topic on Africa's vaccine being unproven product, yet we sort of gave a chance to many other vaccines that were produced around the same time. Why do you believe that there was such an uproar when Africans were told the vaccine that came from Madagascar was not legit?
Because I think when it comes to things like vaccines, a lot goes into it, and the rejection of Madagascar's product was, I think, in my view, purely based on the empirical verification or lack thereof, that most people are very skeptical with herbal medicine, because herbal medicine never really has any side effects. Like you don't know what side effects it can have on you. You see things like aspirin, for instance, you'll be told it can harm you in this way or that way, and that's why when you're buying this medicine that have gone through a proper verification process, they can tell you what harm it will do, what dosage you need to take. But things like the herbal medicine, you have no way of knowing what you're doing. So that was the danger, I think.
Wow, okay. So tell me what stands out to you about the COVID-19 after the discovery of the different vaccines.
Well, I think COVID-19 has really revealed a lot about people or leaders around the world, very negative things about leaders around the world. I've just told you how presidents in Africa promoted unproven products and prevented their citizens from taking caution in the name of prayers certain times.
Yeah.
Now, post the vaccines, what we are seeing is richer countries choosing to hold the vaccine, and even in situations where you realize that they've already vaccinated their populations, at least even 80% of them, they are not in any way thinking about Africa. And I think it was Reuters, I think, that did a piece on them, and I think the recent one being a warning from the World Health Organization against the vaccine hoarding. Some people are now calling it vaccine appetite, where other countries, richer countries rather, are even rolling out booster shots, and that is to mean that they've already vaccinated their people, but they're now coming up with other reasons why you should be getting booster shots to make your immune even stronger at a time when I think only the last time I checked 3% of Africa was vaccinated. So you wonder why people would be that selfish. And I think that for me that stands out in the sense that it has revealed just how much countries or rather richer nations can become selfish and act like animals when they're put in a corner. So people become very afraid. Instead of being loving and thinking about how do we help out people, they're thinking in terms of how do we hold. And I think you did even see at the very beginning of the pandemic, sorry to take you back again, people were buying tissue papers, people were buying things without thinking about how other people will be affected. So yeah, that's one of the things that stood out for me.
Wow. Where do you place the blame with the new Omicron? Wow. Where do you place the blame with the new Omicron variant? Is it the lack of seriousness from Africans, or is it, like you had said earlier, vaccine hoarding?
I think it's a bit of both. South Africa, where this variant was first reported, is an interesting case. So CNN's Larry Madowo interviewed people there who claim they don't trust what is in the vaccines and therefore want to vaccinate themselves. And CNN did show how even a fake funeral ceremony won't scare the public in Soweto to take the vaccine. So I think this comes from the misinformation we talked about earlier that fuel this kind of conspiracy theories and government failing in their civic duty. But also the other interesting bit about this is that I have noticed increasingly that when people are talking about the Omicron virus, they're forgetting the part where it is the South African doctors who discovered this and alerted the public. So this was a good thing. This was Africa actually being part of the solution. But instead of rewarding them and saying, hey, this was a wonderful thing that you've done, they decided instead to condemn them, and it was followed by travel bans. And I think there's a journalist, Samira Saulani, who put it very perfectly. I'll try and paraphrase what she said. She said that she's been looking at these travel bans resulting from Omicron, and she cannot help see racism in them. And her thinking was that there are several places, including I think one of the Scandinavian countries where it had been discovered also, there were no travel bans. So it appeared as though the travel bans were selectively focusing on Africans. And this is the one time where, in fact, based on this argument that Samira Saulani makes, is that when they discovered it in other countries, they did not tell the public. They kept quiet about it. South Africa discovers this, tells the people, and they get punished for it. And so that was one of those things that also stood out for me. That's why I say I think it's a bit of both.
It's a little bit of both. So it's a mixture.
And maybe just to add on that is that the other reason is the continued hoarding is interesting in that WHO did say that the more the West hoards the vaccines, the more we'll have variants like Omicron. So that is something else we need to take care of. That the more they keep thinking that they can hoard and they'll protect, that's how we will not. The best way to beat this disease is to make sure that the vaccines reach as many people as possible.
Most people are vaccinated.
Yeah, so on the one hand, COVID-19 has shown the carelessness of the African leaders in their thoughtless actions and utterances, and on the other hand, it has shown us the varying levels of selfishness and the inconsiderate leaders from the West.
Wow, that's quite a statement, you say. I know that you're not a doctor, but as a communication person, what's your advice going forward, especially in regards to how can we change the narratives and influence better in regards to misinformation?
Now, you're right, only doctors and scientists can give us a clear way forward. But as you've also put it, communications experts need to be brought in to help scientists and doctors help the public better understand what is going on here. I think that what the government needs to invest more in, or rather on, would be perhaps involve more communications experts to help the public keep their guard and how to package the information in a way that helps the public appreciate the vaccines. Basically, I think we are needed very much in this conversation, and I think at this particular point of the fight that we are having is in messaging, because all these myths we are having, all this misinformation, all these conspiracy theories, all these ideas, and it goes across the spectrum, both in the global north and the countries that are holding. They need to get better messaging to realize that it makes more sense
to have everyone vaccinated,
than not to. And even down south, and those of us in the global south or in Africa for that matter, we also need a proper messaging that can help the public realize that, one, we're not immune, and two, that there are things we could also do to keep ourselves from getting this. Yes, and particularly why we need to get vaccinated and of course develop the herd immunity.
And it's interesting that you should say that, because the role of communication is very important, especially as you rightfully put it, the ideas and the thoughts of many people in the African community is that we cannot get this. But now that it is there, and now that there's a vaccine, there's also been a little bit of hesitance from the community to uptake these vaccines. But with proper communication, then we shall see more people actually taking up these vaccines. Thank you very much, Abid, for your time. This has been a great session, and I'm hoping that it has elevated us a little bit further on the conversation of COVID-19.
Thank you for having me. I think these are important conversations for our time.